I am a temple who walks the earth. My womb is fertile for giving birth. I am a woman planted in truth. I grow my branches from sacred roots. You are the form of who you want to be. So come untethered, your soul is free. We're here to heal, we're here to thrive. We are a dream who's come alive. We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination for God's sake. A revelation for God's sake. An evolution for God's sake. An inspiration for God's sake. 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 For God's sake.
And so it is. Hello, Essence. This is Jody England, and you are listening to Wild Soul Medicine Radio. So today we're dropping in to talk about how to get clients. Not really, but in a way, yes. And I played with those of you who are on my list by making that the subject line because if you've been following my work, you know that's completely antithetical to all that I'm a stand for. And also, doesn't your ego pull the trigger on that every single time, right? We all want the pill. We want the quick fix. We want the remedy. We want the blueprint. We want to know the secret that we haven't known. And once we know it, it will make everything easy and fine and good. And it will get us out of our own way once and for all. And so we're going to play today. We're going to play with how getting clients is not at all about getting clients and what really needs to happen for you to find success in those areas that may have been eluding you. And we're going to actually play today. I would like this to be an interactive conversation. And so I took some questions. Actually, the whole show today derived from me asking the tribe, where are you? I mean, what's happening? Where are you stuck? What do you need help with? And really beautifully, we had several women asking for this topic. How do I get clients? I know that it's about essence, but, you know, if I need money and I'm in this place of, you know, I have to fill a class in order to pay my bills, what am I going to do? You know, how can I backtrack? How can I know if I'm in essence? How can I get in essence? Where do I go from here? Right? So I love those questions so much. And so I'm a yes to exploring them, and then they've continued. Refinements of the question have continued to come in as well. So that's what we're going to be playing in today. And if you missed that or you're not part of the tribe, you can still get in on the action. We have a chat page over on our Facebook page. It's WSMRchat.com. WSMR as in Wild Soul Medicine Radio, chat.com. And you can post your questions there throughout the show, and Viv will be feeding them to me, and I will work them in as it makes sense. All right? So definitely head over there and let's play together that way. Great. And so we're going to just drop in. We're going to drop into this really one of my favorite discussions. And in so many ways, you know, Untamed You, which is the larger brand within which Wild Soul Medicine Radio operates, is the gift that keeps on giving. And the perfect example of how when you do something from essence, everything just continues to align and align and align so much better than you ever could have planned it. So, you know, Untamed You was a branding of my essence, right? and we can have a whole other discussion about branding, but really it was an expression of my essence. And, what I find is that there's almost no topic or concept that we can talk about that I don't have an unperspective of, because really, that is what I'm here to do, is to tear down these old paradigms, these old ways of doing things, and to take fierce inquiry into what are we doing and why are we doing it. And so, when we talk about this idea of getting clients or building a business, I really can't do it anything but the unway. And the unway happens to be essence for everything. It is the means and the end. It is the point. And I think sometimes it's really hard to grasp such an esoteric concept, because in a way you get that you have a soul, and you get that, it's unique, and probably it's something that you ought to be living from. But then we get lost in the weeds of the minutia of, yes, but how do I do these things? How do I live a life? How do I run a business? How do I make a sales page or offer a class from an essence space, which, when I've accessed it, really feels so much like a non-doing space. And so how do I marry those, two pieces, right? And so that's what we're going to play with today, is what I've learned so far and how those things play for me and my business, and then see if we can start to build some bridges from where you are and where you're desiring to go. All right. So, let's begin with, so here's the caveat, right? And this is what I find is just so tricky about essence in general, is that you can't operate from essence as a so that, right? You can't do it so that you can get clients, right? Because what happens is, I've used this analogy before, but essence is so much like backfloating. So if you're trying to backfloat, but you're constantly lifting your head up to say, am I floating? Am I doing it? Am I good? Am I floating? Am I drowning? Right? Then you immediately sink. And so essence is the same way. As soon as you start to say, okay, I'm going to be essence-y so that I can fill this class, then you've lifted your head and you're already sinking, because your ego is what asks that question. Your ego is what says, am I in essence? Am I doing it right? Is it working? Am I getting where I want to be? And that is necessarily what does not work. So really, essence has to be a lifestyle. It is a way of being. It's a way of walking as a human. And you can't compartmentalize it like, I'll do it here in my work, but I won't do it out in the world. Or, I'll do it in my relationship, or I'll do it in my meditations. But then when I go to do, my offering in the world, I'm going to do that in this, old-fashioned blueprinty way. Or I'm going to say some words that sound like essence, but actually, my ego is in the driver's seat. And so, when we do those things, you will do those things, you will. And that's part of us really learning this dance between essence and ego. And it's allowing your essence to come forward a little bit and a little bit more and a little bit more until eventually, you're inhabiting it more and more as your norm. So it's not a game of perfect. It's not something you're going to jump out of the chute with tomorrow, because largely you're still in the process of excavating what's in the way of you being in essence. You're teaching your system that it's safe for you to be in essence. And largely you're learning about what it feels like to be in essence, right? You're discovering yourself what essence actually means. And that's why it is the means and the end, because it's not quick. It's not something that can be blueprinted. It's not something I can hand you in a pill today. And that is what is both maddening about it and unendingly beautiful and magical, right? It is the thing that will have your business sing, because there's so much uniqueness about it, and you are the only one in the world who can and will be doing it. And so every time you reveal a little more and a little more, you become more and more compelling, more and more magnetic by those who are on the path behind you, wanting to walk in your steps and knowing that they have work to do with you, right? So I want to, we're going to kind of play with having some inspiration around what essence looks like and also some practicality of actually being in essence. So what I want to share are some stories of how essence looks and feels in a business when you are operating from that magical space, right? So one of the things I'm learning so much about this shepherding in this new paradigm way of doing things is often I believe that it has to be something completely different, right? That throwing out all the rules means we're going to do something that no one's ever seen before. And what I consistently discover is that it may look very similar to some things that have been done before, or it may have elements that have things that have been done before. But what's different is the tweaking of the energetic, right? So an example is the flow of the show today. So every week, as I've mentioned, I wake up in the morning and I start to tune into source. What's moving through me? What's moving through the collective? What am I feeling stuck or inspired or interested in? Does it serve the larger group? You know, all of that. So I tune in today, and what I'm just present to is I'm feeling really whole and complete. And it doesn't feel like I'm necessarily having something that wants to be offered. And so, you know, I sit with it for a while, and then I decide to actually turn to the collective. So I message the tribe and say, hey, what's moving through you all, and how can I serve you, and where are you stuck? And the first woman who responds is the woman who gave the topic for the show today. And then the second woman says, yes, that's exactly what I would love to hear about. And then everyone's posting, here's the refinements, and here's what also I'd like to hear about. And so I ask the question from essence, already whole and complete, right? The perfect request comes back in. The request actually gives me the perfect, authentic opportunity to talk about Soulful Money Medicine, which is the course that I launched a couple of weeks ago, which started this whole conversation, which is a truly aligned offer made within the context of me sharing what I'm passionate about. And it just keeps rolling, right? So I don't have to contrive anything. I don't have to say, okay, what kind of show can I offer so that I can try to talk about soulful money medicine so that I can try to enroll some more people while there's still time, you know? And I'm not going to say my ego doesn't entertain those conversations, because it does, you know? So as I'm tuning into to what the show wants to be about, you know, there's this wide opening of source. Do you have something for me? And then when I met with silence, my ego jumps in with like, hey, we could do a show about something related to soulful money medicine, right? And then I just say, okay, no, not that. And then I just keep opening and opening and opening, right? So you're going to experience this as well. And it's not like, I think part of the trick for me is learning to not feel shame when my ego tries something on, you know, because really what we're doing here is this dance between essence and ego. And in truth, we could not run a business just from essence. There has to be some ego, because ego is what is the masculine holding of the container. It says we do need to charge some money, and we'll need to, use a Facebook group, and we'll need to have, a structure. Like, those are egoic constructs. And if we were just in essence at this point, there really wouldn't be a bridge between me and you, or a way for us to interact if we weren't actually playing with some kinds of structure, So it's not about being shameful when it occurs, but just noticing it and then deciding to let essence navigate instead, right? Or floating back into essence, And what I want to say while we're talking about soulful money medicine is also perfection, because the topic of soulful money medicine class today is we are actually talking about energetic exchange and how to move out of the getting dynamic, right? How do we move out of this win-lose dynamic, or like, I can only win if you lose your money and give it to me? How do we move out of that into something more productive? And so if you aren't yet part of Soulful Money Medicine and you're interested in how to get clients, you should absolutely do Soulful Money Medicine. It's not only about money. In fact, it's not at all about money, in the same way that getting clients is not at all about getting clients. It is about freeing your essence and allowing your soul to step forward in your life in all areas. You can find it at soulfulmoneymedicine.com if you want to join us. Every class is recorded, so even though you haven't been there for the first couple, you'll have those recordings, and they are deep and full, and you'll be listening to them over and over and over again. I'm going to be listening to them over and over and again because really it's channeled information that's just coming through. I was actually just high-fiving my guides this morning like, this is some awesome shit. Thanks for entrusting me to deliver it. Like, yeah, it's even mind-bending for myself, you know. So highly potent, very worth it, and a beautiful place to start playing with us if you're ready to take some next soulful steps toward opening this exchange for yourself. So the other piece I want to say about that is the energetic is the thing, right? So when you're offering something from ego or essence, I could go through these same motions. In fact, I could have a radio show titled exactly the same thing. I could be talking about exactly the same thing. I could give the same information about soulful money medicine that I just did. But if it wasn't coming from essence, the energy would feel different, right? It would have a slightly off feeling, and there would be that energetic of get underneath it, right? So if you want to play with the, you can come back and listen to me just making that offer a minute ago and see if you can feel the difference, right? If you can feel the clarity of, I don't have attachment to whether you join up. I'm not trying to get you to do something. I'm really offering it from a space of it is an extension of who I am. And it opens a portal for you to step in from who you are, right? This is the magic of the new paradigm. This is what we're playing with, okay? So what I've learned is you can't fake it. You can't pretend like you're making an offer that isn't really from essence. And I think, this is like I have even a slight beef with so many programs that are offering like heart-centered entrepreneurship and, that vein where it's like be less salesy while you're selling, and I think it's closer to the truth, but it's still slightly off. Right. In fact, I remember early on in my evolving out of old paradigms, searching for a new paradigm, I took a program by Lisa Sasevich and Ali Brown, which were two of my mentors early on, and they're highly successful, multi-million-dollar businesswomen, and still very much in the old paradigm. And so I took this course from them. I don't remember what it was. I think it may have even been more overtly salesy. It might have been like Speaking to Sell could have been the name of the program. But when it came to the offer, you were supposed to, there was this whole formula where you make this offer, but it's not really an offer. And then you just say it in this way and everybody's rushing to sign up, because you've done them this big favor. And it was this whole construction around making your offer not seem like an offer so that they'll buy it. Right. And I remember I bought that course because I had a speaking gig. It was my first paid speaking gig. And it wasn't a huge amount of money to be paid. And so I wanted to sell a bunch of products. And this was my old company. It was called Buzzin', and we had this product called the Buzzin' Box. And so I was speaking to a group of women who either had cancer or were recovering from cancer. And I was speaking about law of attraction and mind-body connection. And I will never forget that experience. So I gave this beautiful talk, except for the talk was all of these points. And the points were really all a backward way to say that actually you really need to buy my program to really get something, right? And I mean, I structured it to the T based on this talk that they, taught us to give. And then it came to the offer, and it was even like, I mean, I'm embarrassed to say, but it was literally even like a handout that had the offer with the boxes. And, if you choose this one, it's this much. And then there's this bonus offer. And then there's this and this. And so I pass it out to these women who were deeply, soulful and spiritual. And and I didn't sell one thing. In fact, it was like a lead balloon. The whole energy of the room was like, what is this? You know? And yeah, and then I got some, pretty harsh feedback from the woman who invited me to speak. And, yeah, it was not a good experience. And I offer that because, first of all, I want to invite all of us to forgive ourselves, right? I forgive myself for believing that I have to leverage somebody in order to sell something, right? I forgive myself for not knowing another way to offer my great work in the world, right? I invite you to do this along with me. And as you're doing it, just use 2 fingers and start tapping on your eyebrow, on the inside and the outside of your eyebrow. I forgive myself for all the times I've been inauthentic in my offerings. Go ahead and tap along your collarbone. I forgive myself for letting my ego run the show. I forgive myself for being afraid to allow my soul to be the offering, right? I forgive myself for being afraid to let my soul be my offering and my message. Tap on the side of your hand, on the meaty part of your hand, the karate chop point. Go ahead and just tap there. I forgive myself for believing that my essence is not enough, that I have to create something other than my essence to offer the world. Yeah. Tap on your collarbone again. I forgive myself for being scared. It's just that I don't know. I don't know how to do this. And my heart is in the right place, but I'm just finding my way. And I forgive myself for not always getting it perfect. Yeah. Big deep breath in. Yeah, and a deep bow of gratitude to those women who were such an astute mirror for me, to say, no, not this, honey, not this. I needed that experience. It was pivotal. I literally came home and threw that class, threw that course in the trash, and I was like, I am done. This is not the way. It's not my way. It may be the way other people sell, but this is not my way. And it took me years. That was probably 12 years ago. So it took me years to find what my way was, with many, many offerings that fell on their face, with much trial and error, and every single time learning what was so, learning who I really am, learning how I can be authentically me and also offer something in the world. And in fact, realizing that my offering in the world is me. Right? That's called evolution, sisters. And there's no fast way to do it. If you could, if there was a pill I could give you, and tomorrow morning you could wake up and be fully in your essence, your life would be a shambles, because everything you've built around you is based on whatever amount of essence you're willing to bring forward right now. And so your relationships and the work that you're doing and the structures you have around you are all a reflection of that. And it would burn all down if we could jump you forward to full essence tomorrow, right? And you don't want that. You don't want that. And that's not the game. The game we're in is actually, it's about becoming. It really is, who do we become on the way to allowing our essence to be forward in our work? Can we forgive ourselves is not just about the work, but about reconnecting with the love of ourselves, with the knowing of ourselves and the being of ourselves, right? So it is truly the journey. This is the expansion of our soul that we called in when taking this human walk, right? So with that, I invite you to just settle in. Just settle in that there is no finish line to cross. And I'm going to talk some more about that as I give you some examples of what it looks like. Even as you hit a sweet spot and offer something from essence, then what happens, right? So before I do that, though, I want to speak to it. So another question came in. This one was from Ellie, and she asked, how do I know if I'm in my essence, if I can't even describe what it would look like, right? So essentially, how do I know if my offering is in integrity? Because I don't know what my essence looks like. I'm wandering around in the dark here. And I completely get that. And FYI, someone like me who appears to be so in essence, I'm still very in the dark about what my essence is. And every single moment that I'm in essence, I have no idea that I'm in it, right? Because this is the thing about essence. It's the backfloat. So it's like when people talk about being enlightened. When you're talking about being enlightened, you are not enlightened, because the ego is what would hold a concept of separation, of a here and a there, of a made it or not made it, doing it or not doing it, right? Essence is the same thing. So knowing that you're in essence would necessarily mean that you are not in essence. This is the mind fuck, people. I mean, I know it's crazy, and yet this is how it is. So, you know, what that feels like to me is when I do a radio show and I'm really in essence, there are times when my ego comes from the background and it's like, you sound like a crazy person. What are you even talking about? Right? And then I just allow that voice to fade into the background, and I keep saying whatever I'm saying. I cannot even track where I'm going or what I'm doing. That's what essence feels like. When I rock a call, I don't know that I've rocked it. I literally don't. I have, my husband listens to the shows, and so I go check in with him afterward and say, how was that? Because I literally have no idea. Or Viv gives me feedback, you know, afterwards, like, that was amazing. And I'm like, oh, really? Good. I hope it connected, because I felt like we were off the rails with it, and I just have to show up in service of that, you know? And it's every single time, sisters, every single time. Every magic school class I lead, every soulful money medicine class. I led an hour and 45-minute class for soulful money medicine last week, which felt like I was on Pentecostal fire, right? Like the words were coming through and it was so powerful and potent. And also my ego was like, this is very deep. I don't know if this is going to be good. And I got off just thinking that could have been a disaster. I have no idea. But what I do know is there was nothing else I could have done, and I enjoyed every minute of it. My ego didn't love every minute of it. My ego was a little frayed around the edges. My soul loved it. My soul wouldn't have been anywhere else for any amount of money. My soul would have done that for free, right? And so I feel like that's one of the measures of, so there's the larger picture, right? If you can't know you're in essence. And then there's the experience of essence, right? And so the experience of essence feels like free falling and back floating and having and being in that space between trapeze, that we've talked about, like in between the trapeze grabs. It feels like that, like falling and floating and diving and somersaulting, and it's terrifying and exhilarating and enlivening. That's what essence feels like, And the beautiful thing about essence is it is revealed to you just as much as it's being revealed to others. So it's like, if I have a really clear picture of my essence, then in a way that condenses it or defines it in some limiting way, because in reality, my essence is infinite and vast and cannot be defined. That is who I am, right? So I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth, and I just keep showing up and opening it, right? I just keep moving myself out of the way and allowing my essence to express herself and show herself in all of her magical ways, And my sense is that who I am today is radically different from who I will be next week, next month, in 5 years, in 20 years. I can't even imagine, cannot even fathom who I will be given the rate of evolution I'm currently engaged in, And so that's the freight train we're connected to, is this wild, wacky ride of being willing to allow ourselves to be broken open and shown to ourselves, right? And as we're being shown to ourselves, that light happens to fall upon some other people, and they will happen to have their own breaking open as a result of their exchange with the purity of your essence, So that's a beautiful question, and thank you for asking it. And I'll just say a little more about what it feels like to operate from essence and to run a business from essence, right? So from the practical side, there is the real world interfacing of like, okay, great, love all of that, and I do need to pay my electric bill this month, right? And I got to tell you, I've been in this business for about 13 years, and I probably operated from the get paradigm fully for 10 years of that, and then evolving out of it for the last 3, to more and less extents, And what I want to say about that is it isn't a game of perfect. So you don't have to be all the way in essence to offer a course that is amazingly beautiful and allows people to shift and allows you to get money, and lets your essence play and lets you pay your bills. So it's not about that, right? And that's why I think Soulful Money Medicine is such a great entry point into that, because, we're talking about like, how do we get the rust out of this machinery? How do we let our essence begin to meet the world? Because there's so much subconscious programming that says it's not safe. It's not safe for my essence to meet the world because the world is mean, or the world is dangerous, or the world can't really be with my shininess, or I would be overwhelmed if I let myself show up in the vulnerability of essence, right? Or whatever your version of story is. And so, you have to really deepen into being in that inquiry. Essence is not going to magically find you one day. You have to be actively engaged in seeking her and moving the boxes, the flotsam and jetsam that's in the way of the door where you keep her safe, And so, if there's another course that does that, if there's another coach or program or friend or your own work that can do that for you, that's step number 1. It is the vital step. It really is the practice that I am constantly engaged in. My life is my work. My work is my practice. It is my spirituality. It is my beingness. There is no separation between who I am and what I offer in the world and what I do in the world and how I show up in my life. There certainly was separation in the past, right? So in the past, it was very much like, oh, I can do this thing over here. I have a skill set, so I can read energy for people. And then over here, I operate differently in my marriage, or I do that in my bedroom when I'm in a coaching session. Then I come out and I act, quote, normal, right? Which basically meant all of my programming, coming into play. And what I did is I just kept taking down those barriers until there was congruence between who I am, what I'm talking about, what I'm offering, right? Till it's just a flow. So it's one constant flow, and there is no stopping at these false containers that I thought were really necessary earlier on, So, and you can actually, if you look at my stuff online, the Buzz and Box was kind of an expression. I wouldn't even say, it wasn't even an expression of who I was. That was very much a get creation, where it was like I had this idea. I understood law of attraction and how cool it was. I did have a genuine desire to make women's lives easier, but it was very much a headspace creation. Like, if I put this out, then I can get this, and this is how it will create this, and then it will do this. And, and it was, at the time, I was very much still in a masculine paradigm. So I was very good at business, and I understood the mechanics of what needed to happen to create something. But if you were part of Buzzin' when I was doing that, it was this very soft, right? It was like baby blue and sage green, and we had a bumblebee, and so that's not how I was living my life. And as you see me now and you see my iteration, it's certainly not what my essence is. But it was, it was something I was striving for. I wanted more softness in my life. I wanted to be more feminine. And so that was reflected in my creation, and then I kind of grew into my creation. And interestingly, one of the things that I would suggest to all of you is because I think so many of us do this, where we take a class and then, and this happens to me all the time, somebody gets in one of my classes, they learn a concept, right, about money, for example. And even though they can't make their payment to me for a class, they immediately start offering a money class, right? And I'm like, I get it, because I was the same. I learned about law of attraction. I was a pretty good manifester, but there were many areas where I couldn't manifest I couldn't manifest myself out of bankruptcy. I couldn't manifest my company to being successful, but I was teaching about law of attraction, And so, what happened when I was doing Buzzin was, I was teaching women about taking time for themselves and meditating and, having a life that was filled with ease and grace. But I was working, 70 hours a week and making no money and pissed off at everybody, right? The people who were working with me and my husband and my money situation, right? And so the women who were working for me would say things like, don't you think you need to, take your own advice? Like, don't you think you should start to do some of the stuff that you're teaching? And I was like, you don't understand. I'm going to be doing that once this gets in the hands of, hundreds of thousands of women on the planet. Right now I have a mission and I have to do my purpose. And, and so there was this huge disconnect. And what happened is hardly anybody bought any Buzzin boxes. I hardly marketed it. And when I marketed it, hardly anybody bought it. And the few people who bought it, it was life changing. Right. And, so what I want to say about all of that is, one practical step to take right now to bring some congruence between what you're offering in the world and your essence is, are you your own best client? Are you actually doing the thing that you're offering out in the world? Right? So if you're teaching about nutrition, are you eating well? Are you taking good care of yourself? Are you excavating your blocks to being healthy? Do you know yourself deeply on that level? Are you doing the exercises you're selling? Right? I mean, and this is a great practice from both sides because it forces you to grow into what it is you're offering. And it also will show you the places where you are not letting your essence actually meet the world. Right? So in reality, law of attraction is a piece. It's like a tiny piece of my work in the world. It's an energetic based, like how do we manipulate our reality by playing with the energy. So that was true for me. But I wasn't willing, I didn't know how to let my energy and my essence actually meet the world in that way. So I created this giant company with a lot of construct in front of me so that my essence actually didn't meet the world. Right? So that's really, step one is deepening into, not having your work be a separate thing from who you are. So fully embodying and embracing what you're teaching, being your own best student, bringing your life more in alignment with your work, right? So, how can you be more? How can you be more of what you're telling people you can do for them, right? Can you just be more of it, right? Another one is, are you offering something that you want to have the experience of delivering? This is probably my number one driving question as I try on any new program, any new piece is, do I want to do this? And why do I want to do it? And what experience do I want to have while I am doing it? Because the egoic mind is always reaching out for, what do the clients want? And what will they buy? And what will they like? And in fact, right now I'm engaged in the process of Magic School, which is, largely about taking people so deep and having them see places that are so raw and vulnerable that they're mad at me most of the time. They're mad at me most of the time. And, so this is a question, right? It's if I was to sell that and say, here's what's going to happen in this class, right? Is you're going to hate me most of the time and you're going to wonder why you're paying so much, blah, 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 right? Who would buy that? Right? Who would buy it? But the experience that I want to have there is I want to see people waking up at the deepest levels. And so all of the projection that gets thrown my way during that experience is worth it because my soul gets high off of their awakening. I love it. I wouldn't miss it. I wouldn't miss it for the world, right? So, same with the radio show. And then, so the radio show as a whole, and as I said before, when I was creating it, it was like, what experience do I want to have? I don't want the experience of being committed to show up every week, to create a topic, to write an email, to think of something to say, to have to get guests on. Like, I had a radio show before and it was that. And yet I kept getting a pull toward radio shows. So again, with the motions, right? I'm going through similar motions, but what's the difference? The difference is this time it's what experience am I wanting to have? Because essence is an experience. It's not a thought form. It's not a knowing. It's not a doing. It is an experience. So what experience do I want to have? I want to show up and speak about what's alive for me. I don't want to plan anything. I don't want to be committed to anything. I want to have total freedom to say what's on my heart, to do it or not do it. I want to have the experience of lighting people up and inspiring them to do something different. I want to feel wild and I want to feel free. And so that's what I create every single week for myself. I only do it for myself. And then what ends up happening is it seems to light up a lot of you too. Right? It seems to actually resonate with a path that you're on. And every time my mind wants to try to think of what path you're on and create something that will serve your path, I get off track. I get off track. And so I just keep returning to like, well, what do I want to talk about today? And let go of my attachment that it will mean something or that you will like it or that you will do something for me or like me as a result of it. So that's your question for yourself is, what is the experience I'm wanting to have? Would I do it if no one bought it? If no one bought it, would I do this experience? Am I that on fire for it? Right? And that can be a scary question to ask when you need money. It's really tough to get your ego to get out of survival when you're up against, I haven't been exchanging at all and I have to exchange in this moment or die, right? That's not a conducive environment to allowing your essence to begin to tenderly make her way forward, which is why my suggestion is if you haven't already quit a job or you have access to a job that can sustain you financially, that is the best way to set up an experience where you can be resourced, not be back against the wall, and then have your essence get to start to play in your offerings, right? Because when you're detached from needing it, that's when the magic happens, right? When I don't care about offering a class, when I don't need any money, that's when I create a class like Soulful Money Medicine in the morning and have 80 people in it by the next week. That's how that happens. So any way you can create freedom in your financial situation or your physical structure so that you have maximum room for letting yourself open and experiment and play in essence, that's going to serve you very well. And I find that in myself too. So for so many years, it was just like a little tweak here, a little tweak there. I got a little more room. I got a little more essence. And now it's kind of exponentially easier because I'm well-resourced and I have time to play and my essence is, already forward. And so it's like quantum leaping forward now. And that's because I can metabolize it now, right? So it had to go incrementally before. Otherwise, I would have burned my life down because it would have been such a shift. There would have been no way for me or the people around me to actually, maneuver that, And so now there's plenty of space for it and I know what it's like and it can just keep expanding and expanding, right? So within that context, so what would you do it if no one bought it? Do you feel more alive when you engage in every part of it? Every part of it. So what I mean by that is, let's say you get clear that you want to offer, a nutrition class. And as you start to do it, you hate the emails. You're really not connecting with the sales page part of it. You really don't like the marketing part of it, or any one of those. So as you start to notice that, what needs to happen? Be an inquiry around that. So it might be a block needs to be moved, But it might also be that you're not doing the right thing. Either you're not on the right topic, or it's not the right structure or the right format. There might be a tweak that needs to be made energetically, either in the delivery or how you're talking about it or how you're engaging in it. So many people have been sold this bill of goods that we all have to be online superstars. And in my experience, so many of our tribe are not meant for that world, right? Because much of your work is about healing, or it's about interpersonal connection, or, you're much more sages, you're much more individual, deep workers rather than an online superstar that has a really surface following that doesn't really talk about much, and so that's why you have to be asking yourself, is this the right delivery mode for this? Because I have students now who, they see what I do, and then they get out in the world and like, okay, so I need a radio show, and then I need to, have a tribe, and then I need to have, this thing or that thing. And it's not about that. There is no formula. I have people that ask me all the time, who did my pictures? Who did my website? It's not about that either, because those things were in alignment with my essence at that time. And I called in the right practitioners who supported expressing who I am. And so it's from that place that the magic all happens, but you can't replicate it by hiring my web designer. She's not the magic. I'm the magic, and you are the magic. And so from that center place, you have to be calling in those pieces you need. And again, there's no magic pill. So really what you're asking is, if I'm not more alive and engaged in every single part of this, what would I rather do? How would I rather deliver this? What would be easier? What would feel more fun? Even if no one came, what would I do instead? Right? If you could do it any other way, start entertaining what that would be and be willing to let it go. Be willing to let all of your preconceived notions go. Your essence will guide you. And what you may discover is, that she's guiding you towards something that's not all that different, but the inquiry leads you to the experience of actually putting yourself in the mix. And that might be why it's not feeling good for you. Okay? All right. So let's talk a little bit more about, so much to get to. Let's see. Another way this looks from my perspective, when you're running an essence-filled business, is it's a whole lot of waiting and listening. A whole lot. As in, I filled Magic School the last 3 months of last year, and I didn't offer another class until July. So 7 months later, right? A little over 7 months, because I was kind of done offering it earlier than the end of last year. So what have I been doing? Well, I was running my program, and then, I did a lot of... not a lot. I did some angsty thinking about like, okay, what's next and what should I be doing? And I said I would offer soul medicine path class and right? And it was this feeling, my ego had this feeling of put me in, coach, put me in. I'm ready. I'll do what I'm supposed to do, and the universe replies always, surrender more, release completely, steady, right? And all the while, it's about who I'm becoming. Who I'm becoming is a woman who has capacity for listening, who has capacity for right action and potent waiting, so that when action is inspired and moves through, it moves through with potency. It's not diluted by a lot of action or a lot of flailing and floundering, which is what I did for years and years and years. It takes a lot of flailing to fill 70 hours a week with work. And I did it. I did it very well, and now I do a lot more listening. I'm engaged with clients and work for about 10 hours per week at this point. And the rest of the time I'm listening. I'm living my life. I'm inhabiting myself. So what that feels like in my system is, sometimes my ego doesn't love that still. And she gets on me with like, yeah, but Magic School is going to end in a couple months. And then what will you offer? And shouldn't you have a launch already starting? And will you do Women Come Undone again? And blah, blah, blah. Right? And I just say, thank you, ego. Thank you for keeping me safe. You might be right. Let me check in for a minute. Does something need to happen? And I check in with Source and check in with Essence. And it's like, nope, all is well. All is well. I'm going to keep being me, and then some things are going to happen. So, I want to just say that there is no perfect way to navigate that, because only you know your circumstances. And so your ego maybe is telling you things like, but your bills need to get paid, but we do have to, take some action. And that may be true for your circumstance. And it certainly was at times for mine, which is why I would offer programs that were, kind of in alignment. After the Buzzin' thing, I offered, if you saw me during my flat ironed short hair sassy phase, the company was called Energy Evolution at that point. And I offered a course called Get the Question Marks Out of Your Business, which, and I had a show called Wake Up Call TV, where I did videos each week to teach energy tools. And so, that was closer to my iteration, but still very packaged and produced, and a lot of work. It took a lot of work to make those videos every week, and very much from a headspace of choosing a topic that was trending on the internet so that I could get some likes and blah, 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 and the response was lukewarm. I didn't have great success in the marketing of that one either. But I did sell some stuff. I sold some packages of that course. I made a little money, learned a lot about myself. You know what I mean? So I just really feel like all of these experiences are your university, right? YOU. Your university is, I think I might be in Essence. I'm going to go ahead and offer something, right? I think this feels good. Let me try it on. And then you try it on and something happens, right? And all the while you're learning these skills of detachment and forgiveness and shining again and opening yourself and being vulnerable and powerful. Finding your flow, finding your genius, owning your genius. It's like all of that is happening, So, you'll be tempted. You'll be so tempted to pull the trigger and revert to some kind of a quick fix. And if you do that, I forgive you in advance. If you do that and it works out, fantastic, right? And if you have the option of not doing that, right? If you find your way to pausing, do your work. Become ready. Become ready. Find who you are. Radically know and free yourself. I am still doing that. I'm still doing that every single day, even with the success that I've created. Because I can see a giant evolution of who I am and what I'm here to do, and I'm not ready for that either. So I'm just right here where I am, doing what I do, learning who I am, So what are the tools for this? My biggest tools are energy reading, energy clearing, and energy healing, right? For me, it's all about energy. That also is the work that I do. And as I mentioned, my work is my practice. So if you have a healing modality, perhaps you need to be applying it to yourself more. If you don't have a healing modality, this one adds to every other thing. So what I find is when people learn energy reading, then they can take it and actually put it underneath and infuse every other thing they're already doing. So it's not about learning to read energy so you become me, but it's learning to read energy so you can read you and then become more you, right? That's what we do in Magic School. We're doing that in Soulful Money Medicine as well. So that really is, I can't imagine being on this walk without those tools. I also use trusted advisors. So these trusted advisors, because as I mentioned, when you're in essence, you don't know it. And sometimes when you're not in essence, you don't know it. Sometimes your ego just jumps into the driver's seat and is driving the whole school bus, and you didn't even see that coming, right? You thought you were headed down the right path. And so you really need some trusted advisors who are willing to hold up mirrors for you, be honest with you with what they see. And also they have to deeply know your essence, right? So they can't be in competition with you. They can't have their own shit in the way. And for me, that's Viv and Lance. They are my closest advisors. And they really hold that mirror up for me to tell me where I'm on and where I'm off, and to lovingly guide me back when I'm off track. So trusted advisors, and I've trained them. I've trained them to know what I need, to be willing to say it, to work with me when I'm in ego instead, right? Like they're amazing, and I can't imagine doing it without them either. 2 other tools: being willing to throw out all the rules, right? So this happens to be in my nature, and you will need a healthy dose of it as well, because your ego has all kinds of rules. Your ego believes it needs to be a certain way, or you to do a certain thing in order for you to be safe. And so what you're doing is finding this dance between questioning your own set of rules, questioning why you think you have to do a certain thing, so that you can open those gates of freedom to do what's true rather than what you think you ought to, right? And then the final one is doing it for me. Not because of what I think they want or will buy, but again, for me. So being in the experience and creating experiences that I want. Okay. So that's what I do up front. And then what happens is, let's say I'm in the sweet spot and something finds me, right? An inspired idea finds me, like Soulful Money Medicine. So the offer happens from a sweet spot, and then immediately my ego tries to attach, always. And yours will do the same, right? So it was inspired, and then it's like, oh yeah, Soulful Money Medicine, that's a great idea. I think people would buy that. I think this price point is good. I think we could sell it this way and that way, right? And so then you just detach again. But what's the experience? What am I wanting to have? Would I do it if no one buys it? What part of it would I do if no one buys it, right? And then you get some clients, right? So some people sign up because you have this moment of clarity where you're in essence and it shined through and they said yes. And then your ego starts to attach again. Well, 5 clients is nice, but wouldn't 15 be better? I wonder if we need to run some Facebook ads. I wonder if we should blah, 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 right? And it's not that running Facebook ads isn't the thing. What it's about is finding and staying in your internal alignment so that essence is the thing that's flowing through the actions. And that's why so much pause is required, especially at the beginning, because your ego is so strong and it's so used to running the show. So, every step of the process, it's not easy street. It's never easy street. It's not like I did this thing and now, great, I had an inspired idea. And I think this is what many egos attached to when they heard me say, I had this inspired thing and there's 80 women signed up. Like, great, how do I do that thing? And what I want to be clear about is I'm still on the path. Each week when I'm showing up to deliver the next class, my ego beats me to the door. And my ego starts to think about what would be great and what would make people refer this program to other people or tell me that it's amazing, right? Or whatever the story is of the day. And then I just settle in, I get beneath that, and I show up for, okay, what wants to move through me? What wants to move through me? What experience am I creating for myself? As the women in the class start to project at me their desire to be saved or the density of their own field, I just push all that back. I push it back, and I allow myself to feel, but what's true for me? What's true for me about this topic that I'm offering? What enlivens me to speak about it? Where are my own ahas, right? And that's what infuses the work. Okay. Last thing I want to say, because I know we're here at the top of the hour, but this one feels important, is, so there's this beautiful example of, the question came in, this one was from Liz, and she said, there was something where you spoke in your calls about trying to find your purpose and instead, stop trying to find your purpose and instead focus on what calls to you in that moment. How does one stay motivated long enough for such a calling to become a career? So perhaps it would be good to hear from you around keeping one's energy up in order to sustain these essence-revealed choices. So Liz, great question. And that is really what I'm speaking to. And I want to give another example, this one about Magic School. So Magic School was my big offering for last year. And, so there were over 50 women who enrolled in that. It's a very expensive course. And and it's a long course. So, this is another kind of pitfall, if you will, of being an evolutionary, is when you put out a program and then you evolve really quickly, can you stay within a program or will you out-evolve it, right? And this has been a perennial problem of mine, even with my shorter courses, where by the time it's branded and offered, I've already outgrown it. And then I feel some embarrassment about, continuing to offer it. So what's happening with Magic School is we're near the end. We've got a couple months left. And I'm sharing this example by way of this is what it will feel like to live an essence-based business life, So what's happening is I'm evolving. And what I'm deciding, so my ego's like, but hey, that class really paid off last year, and I think we should offer that again. And my soul is saying, yes, and there's something a little off. Like I have evolved out of parts of it, and it was highly in alignment with who I was last year, and it's pretty in alignment with who I am now, right? And so the question is, well, what do I do with that? What do I do with that? And so this is really the last piece that I want to leave you with is that what you have to be willing to do when you are operating from essence is you have to be willing to die to your creation every single day. I have to be willing to let the whole thing go, even something that earned over $300,000 for me last year. It's all on the table always, entirely. It has to be, because if it's not, then it's my ego driving the bus about it, right? And so from that space, Kali Ma is my guide, and she teaches me about coming into the fires of transformation and creation and destruction. And I'm learning that destruction doesn't have to mean tearing a life down. It just means not getting attached. And really my mantra is, if it's not in essence, it has to go. If it's not in essence, it has to go. And so, really the dance is always to be inquiring around what is essence, what is block, what is truth. It's all about the becoming and never about the destination. So with that, my dear, dear sisters, on this wild and woolly path of creating ourselves and bringing ourselves fully into the world, thank you so much for your courage, for your kind and pure hearts, for your willingness to die a little every day so that you can live more fully now and evermore. And so it is. All right, sisters, until next time, so much love. Bye for now.
We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination, for God's sake. A revelation, for God's sake. An inspiration, for God's sake. Illumination, for God's sake. For God's sake. For God's sake. For God's sake.